What's up, spooky hoes? Today we are going to be reviewing my top 10 movies, horror movies, of the 2000s. So that's 2000 to 2010. So the reason why I decided to do this category first, for my first of my top 10 series, is the 2000 movies, which is weird because of my age, is the last category of movies that I have actually been introduced to. I grew up on the 80s horror movies, and I started kind of venturing into the 90s, but more so 70s and 60s. And then it wasn't until when I got married to my husband, that I started watching movies that were made post 2000. I didn't think that they really had a lot to offer, but I was wrong. And here are my top 10. So the movies that I have decided to include on this top 10 list are not remakes, they can't be remakes, and no sequels. So these are all original concept movies for the most part. So coming in at number 10 is Cabin Fever. I never saw Cabin Fever until very recently, and I absolutely loved it. It's super campy, it's got great makeup. There's this one scene where the girl is shaving her legs in the bathtub and just all the skin comes off in her razor. It's just super cool. The makeup and special effects in this movie are so gross. It just is really, really well done. It's definitely got that campy feel without being too cheesy. It does border horror comedy in some aspects, but overall it's very real. There's like a water contamination and all these kids in the camp, which I love that they're at a cabin in the woods. It's super, Friday the 13th-esque, but then you've got the whole contamination outbreak aspect of it, and it's a lot of fun. Winston, who is the cool college party young police officer, he is so much fun in the movie. You can just watch this movie and really have a great time with your friends and laugh at some points, but then also be really disgusted and oh God, if this was real, this would be horrible. And I love movies that can do that. It's just super enjoyable, very 2000s, and I love it. And it is coming in at number 10 for me. So coming in at number 9 is Saw. A lot of you might be wondering why it's so low on my list. I love the whole Saw franchise. I love what they've done with the sequels. I think it's super fun. I wish that they would never stop making the Saw movies, even though, I know for a horror fan to say that, even though it gets dragged on and the storyline starts to kind of dissipate, there's only so much they can do with revisiting the original storyline. But the original Saw is, of course, iconic. I think it does have that kind of low budget feel to it, almost kind of like it wouldn't take off the way that it did, but still the first movie is very, very iconic. It's the way it was shot is just so unsettling when in the bathroom with the blinking lights, and of course the inevitable end of him having to cut his own foot off, and it's got a lot of suspense and trying to figure out what's going on, and it's a really good movie. It's a little bit lower on my list just because it probably wasn't my favorite Saw movie of all time. I think some of the sequels are better, and we're not including sequels on this list. So Saw is my number 9 pick. If you haven't seen Saw, you've got to get around to it. I was super late getting around to it. I actually didn't watch Saw until they announced the Saw house at Halloween Horror Nights. And my brother Bradford is obsessed with all of the Saw movies, and he was like, we have to watch this before we go to the house. And it was definitely worth the watch for sure. I love it. There's a reason why it became iconic despite its kind of low budget feel. And if you haven't seen Saw, definitely give it a watch. Coming in at number 8 is Jeepers Creepers. I was absolutely not expecting to love this movie as much as I did. When I saw it, which once again was recently in the past, 5-6 years, I was like, whoa, where has this been? It's, of course, an iconic slasher movie, if you will. The creature from Jeepers Creepers became one of those iconic, you know, Freddie, Michael, Jason type of guys. And even though we don't see too much of him in the first movie, he really kind of makes his debut in the second. What you do see of him in the first movie is like, it's so confusing. You don't know what he is. He stands and operates as a man in some aspects, and then in other aspects you see him, you know, he's flying and he's just super bizarre. But I think my favorite part of Jeepers Creepers was the fact that he's got this underground lair that's totally disgusting. Super House of a Thousand Corpses feel, which we will get to. I just love the classic horror elements of this movie. You've got the creepy theme song, you know, Jeepers Creepers, that everyone's gonna sing forever just to, you know, freak you out and make you think of this movie. It's got some campy aspects here and there, but you know, some of the effects are slightly dated, more of like the green screen effects, but overall, you know, the makeup and of course the costume of the creeper is just amazing. And this movie actually has a lot of suspense and, you know, freak out mode, because there's like chases involved and of course like going back to the lair and oh my god, is he gonna get caught? And it's a lot of fun. Definitely recommend Jeepers Creepers. Okay, so my number 7 pick is Dead Silence. Dead Silence is such a beautiful horror movie. They went back to cinematic elements in film when making this movie. It's so dark, and the way it's filmed, it's got fog on the water, I've got the old house. It is so good. I saw this movie when it first came out, and it's still one of my favorites. I think about it often. I love the storyline, whether you think it's cheesy or not. It's one of those storylines that sticks with you. All the dolls, I mean, dolls have been overkill, but this movie makes all of the dolls work. It plays into the story. You've got a lot of real life elements. When they literally make the dad a ventriloquist dummy out of his corpse, like, it's just so iconic. There's twists, sorry, spoiler alert. There's, you know, twists, there's, you know, the classic detective that really plays a part in the whole movie. Got the undying love of the husband just trying to figure out what's actually going on, and it's just you want to jump into this movie and go along with the storyline. It's and then just the way it was filmed is just so beautiful, very iconic. I think it's definitely underrated. I don't know why this movie isn't more established in the horror community. For sure, watch it. If you haven't seen it, or if it's on the bottom of your list, prioritize it. 100% top 10. My number 6 pick is The Strangers. Oh my god, this movie is so scary. Like, I have this thing with home invasions, like something about being in the comfort of your own home and having that comfort be completely ruined is so scary to me. And then the fact that basically no motive was ever revealed makes it even more horrifying. You've got the iconic masks that are covered. You've got female killers, which are a part of it, which is really cool. You don't see a lot of female killers, and even though they didn't really serve a purpose in this movie, it was just nothing really mattered in this movie. It was just all creepy. You know, is this person in your house? Are they not? What do they want? Can I give them something to make them go away? And no, the answer is no. And then I think, I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that the marketing on this movie made it seem like it was based on a true story and that it was actually something that happened. I don't think it was, but it did make it that much scarier. There's this beauty about 2000's movies is the internet was here, but it wasn't like it is today. So in a similar case with Blair Witch, like, you can do this marketing and it actually makes sense. And you can kind of get away with you know, the whole Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing, like, oh yeah, it really happened, when it was very loosely maybe based on one aspect of something that happened in a criminal case. But still, so many people thought that The Strangers was a true story, and it was so scary. And a lot of people don't like this movie in the horror community. I don't know why. It's got tons of suspense. It's got the awkwardness of the rocky relationship with the main characters, and it's scary. It's really scary. My husband will like refuses to watch it. He'll never watch it with me. It's definitely, I can name pretty much any horror movie by myself, alone in the dark, Home Alone, but The Strangers is one I would put on last, because that fear of being in the safety of your home and something happening, it sticks with you. If you haven't seen The Strangers, give it a watch for sure. All right, so we're gonna get into the top 5 now. So coming in at number 5 is Rob Zombie's masterpiece, House of a Thousand Corpses. House of a Thousand Corpses is so Rob Zombie. If you've seen any of his films, aside from Lords of Salem, you can kind of know what to expect in terms of Rob Zombie thematic elements. Of course, he's got his wife, Sherry Moon, as baby Firefly, and you've got this whole Firefly family that is just so deranged and sick and twisted. And it's so fun to go into their home and see all of their crazy stuff that they go through. You've got Otis, he just looks so gross in this movie. He's got this long, stringy blonde hair, and he's kidnapped these cheerleaders, and you can just tell that he's just nasty and just gross, and he just adds so much to it. And you've got Captain Spaulding, and you don't really know, yeah, he's kind of like, white trashy kind of guy, but you don't know how big his part is throughout the film. And then it just becomes, he just becomes such an iconic character after that. And you don't really understand why it's called House of a Thousand Corpses for the majority of the movie, because you're just following this really bizarre family. And then you get down to, Dr. Satan, who is beautiful. I absolutely love his character concept. And you get down to his lair with all these different monsters and human things that he's made. And it turns like, almost like sci-fi. But you've got all these classic horror elements with, almost this haunted house in a way. I absolutely love Captain Spaulding's trolley ride. I went to one fair where you sat in a tram and you went through a haunted house, and it was the best thing I've ever experienced. I don't know why they don't exist anymore. I have not found one that was actually worth going on. So seeing that in House of a Thousand Corpses was so much fun, and I could just feel for these kids who were going on this tour and what they were doomed to get into. And it's just super fun. The makeup is great in this movie. The special effects are great. You can tell it didn't have the largest budget in the world, but still it was super fun. And I think a lot of the elements of it actually still hold up. They're not too dated. Of course, there's Devil's Rejects, which is a sequel, so it did not make the list. And then now 3 from Hell that you can watch as, the trilogy. But House of a Thousand Corpses still rules out anything. It's such a good movie. It's so weird and cringy, but super fun, and I highly, highly recommend it. My number 4 pick is American Psycho. American Psycho is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love this movie. It's so underrated. It's got Christian Bale, Reese Witherspoon, Jared Leto. It's just Willem Dafoe. I mean, the cast, come on. The cast is amazing. And it's satirical horror. It's not a true follow the script dark horror movie, yet it's still one of my all-time favorites. And darkness, the way it's filmed, is a top priority when coming to my favorite movies. But something about American Psycho is just so great. You get this insight into this narcissistic, psychopath. You get an insight into his brain, and he narrates throughout the whole thing, and you just kind of take this journey with him of what is going on, how come no one is saving him from this doomed lifestyle, and will he ever be saved? And just the way it ends is totally up for interpretation if anything even really happened. And it's just so much fun to try to figure out. I just love so many aspects of this movie's, naked in tennis shoes, covered in blood with a chainsaw. He's got the call girl and the prostitute and all that stuff that he goes through with them. It's just so, this movie, it just feels so real, even though it's pushed in your face that it's probably not. I just love it. I've written like 4 papers on American Psycho. It's one of my all-time favorite movies to analyze, to compare, to figure out what is actually happening. It is based on a book. I've read part of Bret Easton Ellis's book, American Psycho, and it's even more detailed and raw in the book. But as far as the movie goes, it's so worth a watch. It might be a little confusing, maybe needs a second watch, but it's just got so many great elements to it. I love American Psycho. I crave American Psycho. I get into the mood. I can almost recite every word to it. It is such a good movie. My number 3 pick is Final Destination. The Final Destination movies are so good. All of them, I love them. Just like Saw, I wish they would keep making them. There's endless opportunities that you can do with it. Once again, there is a main storyline that the sequels try to follow. Yeah, the more sequels you make, it's probably not going to tie into the storyline, but they are so good. I am a huge, huge believer in fate. I'm a predeterminalist. I think that fate rules all, and the idea that fate and the curse of death is coming to get you when you have these breaks in reality, these visions or whatever that allow you to escape death for whatever reason, and that death will inevitably get you through the most creative, fun ways. The kills in these movies, I'm talking about Final Destination, the first one specifically, are so good. I can't not think about Final Destination when I board an airplane. It's just, and the way that they film these kills, not only the makeup and the special effects, but it's like old Hollywood blockbuster film. It's like, go to Universal Studios, get your, explosions and all of the realistic things that went into movie making. There's very little CGI. There is some CGI, but there's very little, and it's just, I love these movies. I crave them. I want to watch them all the time because, unlike a lot of horror movies, it's not like all these supernatural elements are going on and no one's there to witness them. They've got the FBI involved. There's these detectives that are following the main character, trying to make out what is going on, even though forensically nothing matches to him being at the crime scenes and doing this stuff. It's just all, death that is creating these elements, and it's just so good. I love Final Destination. Mainly, yeah, the story is super cool and pretty original, really original, a lot of fun, but something about the way that it's filmed and how real the effects look, because they are real, it's not CGI. It's super cool. You always are wondering what is going to be their next big kill, and I love Final Destination and the whole series of movies. It's just so great. I actually just watched the first one very recently, and then I went on a kick and watched all of them, and they are all so good. Obviously in the later ones you get a little bit heavier into CGI, and those are also my least favorite ones, but 1 through 3 is like amazing. Final Destination, the first one, is, you know, what I always go back to watching, and that's why it made number 3 on my list. It's you've got to watch it. It's got the super like late 90s, early 2000s feel to it, which I also love, and it's just a fun movie, super fun. And I love when you get into the 90s and early 2000s movies, when it's a fun movie to watch, it's just so worth it. My number 2 pick is The Collector. The Collector came into my life unannounced and slapped me in the face. It was randomly on Hulu or Amazon Prime or something. And we're like, oh, I remember seeing this cover, you know, it's got the mask, kind of a Nightbreed-esque mask on the cover. And so me and my husband, we just like, you know, turned it on, whatever. Oh my God, this movie is insane. Like, I've never watched a movie where I've been on the edge of my seat, sick to my stomach. Like, it is so suspenseful. There's booby traps everywhere. You've got this killer dude. You're like, you know, the main character, you don't know if he's going to be good or bad, and you end up just rooting for him to the very end. He turns out to be a super solid guy, even though he's there under, you know, situations that he probably shouldn't be there for in this house. And it's dark. The whole movie is super dark, and you've got these weird, like, this bug element to it, and you're like, you know, what is that? Is like symbolism, or, you know, what is that going into there? And it's just, a lot of it is explained in The Collection, which is the sequel, which is an amazing sequel. You know, sequels are never as good as the first ones, and this almost is. If you have seen The Collector or you haven't, you've got to watch both The Collector and The Collection. The Collector, though, it's so scary in that you've got that suspense element. You don't know if he's going to be caught. You've got the killer, I mean, on his tail, and it's just nerve-wracking. Like, it's so scary. And then you get to the basement and you're like, oh my God, what is happening here? Some real horror elements. I mean, you've got gore in it. It is fantastic. Some of the booby trap killings and the way everything is set up is just like, it's insane. It is so worth the watch. As a cat lover, it was hard to watch at one point in time. If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean. Just so good. I can't believe I'm gonna make a list of underrated horror movies, and this one's gonna have to be number 1. I just don't understand why this movie is not blasted everywhere. It is so good. I really thought about making it my number 1, but I couldn't quite do that quite yet. But it is an amazing, very well made movie. The score of the movie, just like, you know, the songs that they include in the movie just fit right with it. It's so good. If you have not watched this movie, get on it now. Coming in at my number 1 pick is Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat is so good. I love Trick or Treat. I'm gonna pan around real quick. There's Sam. There he is. There he is again. I love Trick or Treat. Sam is so cute. I love that this movie is anthology-esque. Like, it's got 3 different storylines going on, and they all tie in together, which is super fun. And you don't really realize that everything is coming together until the end, and you're just kind of trying to piece it together here and there. It's so iconic. First of all, it takes place on Halloween, which has a direct string to my heart. I can't get over movies that take place on Halloween. I automatically already love them so much more. You've got these rules of Halloween that you have to follow that are so true. You do not blow out your pumpkin. You always check your candy. All of these things that are just so true to a Halloween lover. And you've got Sam, who is just like, this like little cute little monster thing that goes around and you know, he's just ominous because he's always there when all these crazy things happen. And then you get to see his true self, which is so beautiful. I love the concept design on this. I love the werewolves who you know, there are disguised as these beautiful, you know, girls in these sexy outfits going to a party, and the makeup on the girls when they start to turn. I love that scene. And there's boobies. It's just, it's so much fun. This movie is great. I actually showed it for one of my Halloween movie marathon viewing parties that I had, and I love to see, you know, non-horror fans reactions to this movie. And a few people were like, wait, I don't understand what's going on. You need to sit down and watch it because everything ties in and everything was done for a purpose. And sometimes the shots are not, you know, linear in order, but it's so much fun to try to figure out. I just think this movie is an instant classic. Sam became an iconic character for Halloween. And if you have not seen Trick or Treat, I don't know what you're doing. I, for some reason, didn't see it until way later, and it became one of my all-time favorite movies ever. I'm so obsessed with it. And it's just, once again, it's such a fun movie. It doesn't necessarily have that like 2000s feel to it like a lot of these movies do. It does feel a lot more modern. It could have definitely come out in, you know, 2015 and you wouldn't know the difference. It's just, it's so good. It's so good. And if you have not seen Trick or Treat, if you have not seen any of the movies on this list, you need to get around to it, because obviously I haven't seen every movie that came out between 2000 and 2010 that's in the horror genre, but these made my top 10, and they made my top 10 as a true horror fan for a reason. If you haven't seen them, you've got to get around to them. And because so many of the movies that made my list are just fun overall, you can sit down with your partner, your friends, and just watch it. It's so, they're all so fun. Please watch these movies. Let me know in the comments what your favorite movies are that came out in this decade, and let me know what I left out. Like I said, there are some of the iconic movies that possibly would have made my list that I just haven't gotten around to seeing yet. So if you have some, drop them in the comments. I'd really, you know, love to watch some more. And always like and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next.